very first thing that we can see here, that there comes this input type which says it is a text field. So there are two text fields over here. This is the first one and this is the second one, and in the middle one there's another one which is practically an email field. And then comes this text area, and then comes another input type which is practically submit type right over here. So we need to individually customize each of them. Then we need to put something like this form holder, then comes this form, and then comes this input. Now if we just leave it up to this one, and if we carry on with our customization, then each and every input field over here, those will be having the same common properties as we had seen in our previous cases, where we haven't differentiated between two distinguishing input fields. But what if we want some different color to this particular fields, this enter name and enter phone input field, and there will be another different property in case of this enter email. There will be a different property for this submit here button. In an order to achieve that, we have to rely on those specific attribute selectors, those we had learned in our previous tutorial. Now in this particular case, all we can do, the very first thing that we are going to do, we are going to target this text field. So that is why if we get back to our project, we will now specify that this particular input element, which has a type of, what should be the type? Text. So what we are specifying over here, we are specifying that any input element which has a type of text, it will be having a background color of this one. It will be having a padding property of 0.6 cm, and it will be having a width of, for say, 40%. And on the other hand, there shouldn't be any border. So if we do not provide this particular property over, that means if we leave the border alone, we do not specify what kind of border we are providing over here, just leave it up to this far, get back to your project, and now we will see that both those input fields, those were of type text, those are practically having two distinguishing properties than the others. So we can see that these input type text fields, those are practically having different properties than the rest of those input elements into this particular form field. So that is why we can say particularly that this type, which has a text of an input element of a particular form field, which resides within this particular form holder selector name, those will be following these particular properties. Now in the second case, all we are going to do, we are going to copy this thing and we are going to paste it over here. What we have here, we have this particular input type text and this particular input type email, and then we have an input type of submit. So there are three individual types for a single individual input element, and we need to specify all of them individually as we wish to use something other, some different properties for each of these individual elements. Now what we are doing over here, instead of this type text, we are now providing the type of email. Now if we just leave it up to this far, and if we press Ctrl S and get back to our project, we will now see that this individual input element of email, which has a type of email over here, it is also displaying the same exact properties those had been seen in case of this input type fields of text. So this is the second case. In the same manner, all we are going to do, we are going to copy this thing. No need to worry about it. We will be defining it, we will be discussing it definitely, but first of all, let's arrange them into a proper segment. So all we are now doing in the third case, we are now putting this input type submit, and if we now just change these colors over here, so instead of this ash color, we are now putting on this particular red color over here. So the padding will be exactly same and the width will be 40%. So we do not need to provide this 40% width over here. All we can do, we can create this auto property for this particular width. So what it will be doing, it will be calculating the exact space which is being used up by this particular individual input type submit, and then it is going to calculate the width, just keeping all those things in mind, this particular padding property here. And another thing, do not ever forget to put this one, this box sizing, border box in these cases. Those are very necessary thing in the view of mobile responsiveness. So all we are now providing, we are putting this box sizing border box here, we're putting the same one over here. And now if we just get back to our project, we will now see that this particular input type submit, it is now individually putting a different color than the rest of these form fields. As we can see over here that all those form fields here, this input type text, this input type email, all of them are practically having different properties than this input type submit here. So what we were missing that particular text area, so we will be discussing on with it. But the very first thing that we can see that in this respect, first of all, we can safely put a different property, a different color property of this one. So in case of an input type email, all we are now putting, we are providing here a different background color of yellow than these input type text elements, and we are now discarding off all those borders. So we do not wish to have any kind of border, so we are putting this border to none. Same thing will be here, border none. And in the last case too, we will be putting here this border none. Now if we get back to our project, we can see that this will be the result. So we can see that all those borders are now being nullified, and this entire email type, that means this type email, it is now executing a different yellow color than the rest of these form fields. And we have to customize our text area here. But first of all, now let's pay attention. We are now getting back to our project, and for the time being, we assume that we have used same properties for all of them. Now we can see that we have provided all those properties same for both these selectors, this input type text and this input type email. If we get back to our project, we can see that all of them are having equal properties. There's absolutely no difference between them. Now in that particular case, we do not have to mention them separately. All we can do, we can use both these selectors, we can combine them here. So we will have to put a comma, we have to separate both these selectors with this comma. We are putting it over here, that means this input type text and this input type email, both of them are now defined into the same single syntax, and we do not have to use them here. We are discarding it. Now if we get back to our project, we will see that all of them are practically having equal properties. They are retaining all those properties same here. There's no problem with it. So in case if you found that all those properties, those you are using, are common in nature, then you won't have to repeat them for different selectors. All you can do, you can use them into a single syntax separated by a comma, such that all those selectors come distinguishingly, and there's absolutely no problem for the browser to read the instruction and to execute them accordingly. Now in the last case, all we have to do, we have to customize the text area, remember, so we need to customize them. So what we can do over here, so a text area which is residing within this particular form element, which in turn is residing within the selector name of form holder. So they will be executing this particular property, such as with 70% let's provide a mean height of 200 pixels for say. We are putting a particular padding of 1 em, and we are putting here a box sizing of border box. Now if we get back to our project, we can see that this will be the output. So we can see that we haven't provided any kind of background here. Now if we put a background color of, for say, CCC, and if we specify a color property of white or anything you wish, get back, and you can see that this will be the result, and this is the color here, as we can see right over here. So definitely we can change the color, we can change everything, every related properties inside, and there shouldn't be any type of problem while stylizing our form field. All we need to remember that we need to specify the particular selector which is practically holding this form field. As we can see here, that this is the selector which is holding all these form fields over here, and we then need to specify the form element inside, and then we need to specify this text area or this input with a clear mention of type into it. And in case if there is a repetition of properties, all you need to do, then you need to combine all those selectors together into a single syntax, and then you can use all those common properties. Those will be used along with these particular selectors. Now up to this, I think it's alright. You can create your own form and you can customize your own form fields, so there shouldn't be any problem. In the last case, all we are now going to do, we are going to discuss on about some definite or specific attribute selectors, those we had missed in our previous tutorial.